Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I trust you had a good weekend. It's getting very, very hot here, I must admit. I like this tweet from Thierry Henry. Asante, Kenya, never going to forget your spirit and passion for the game. And he's taken this photograph from the top of the KICC, I think. We, the generation, trod through great tribulation, Bob Marley, Exodus. He also said, one good thing about music, when it hits you, you feel no pain. Home is not where you are born, home is where all your attempts to escape cease. Naguib Mahfouz. I like this photograph, so much love at the Jindal mansion. And I came across a story about a photojournalist, a Kenyan photojournalist called Priya Ramrakha. Look at this photograph from about the 1950s of two bicyclists in Nairobi. The article in question is called On the Side of Truth, the Kenyan photojournalist Priya Ramrakha. Started working as a photographer as a teenager, was a gifted and subtle documentarian, yet he remains relatively unknown in his native Kenya and beyond. Born into a Kenyan Indian family, by age 18 he was working as a photojournalist for his uncle J.L. Vidyarthi's rebellious Nairobi newspaper, the Colonial Times. From there, Ramrakha quickly made his name against the grain of the British state-owned press. Ramrakha sought to capture his subjects with an acute and penetrative yet sympathetic eye, and his earliest efforts focused on the anti-colonial nationalist movement, the Mau Mau War, and the Kenyan populace at large. Covered 20th century icons from Malcolm X to Salvador Dali. Here you can see a photograph of a rally for John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign in Los Angeles from 1960. Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future, John F. Kennedy. And then I came across this photograph of Kennedy as well, Lyndon B. Johnson yelling at the pilots of a nearby plane to cut their engines so that John F. Kennedy could speak, as Kennedy is seen trying to calm him down Amarillo, Texas. And a final quote from John F. Kennedy: history is a relentless master. It has no present, only the past rushing into the future. To try to hold fast is to be swept aside. Political reflections, Kellyanne Conaway. The fix was in against Donald Trump from the beginning, she said. Clearly, Trump is feeling the pressure, and a very interesting piece of entrapment by Robert Mueller, who was in possession of a number of emails, and was questioning folks who were not aware that he was in possession of those very same emails. It is significant that the extraordinary summit was called by Turkey and that it takes place in Istanbul and not in Mecca. This is the OIS, largely insignificant. This Saudi animation video of Mohammed bin Salman invading Tehran and capturing Qasem Soleimani is out of this world. It is extraordinary. Please watch it. On the 13th of November, I wrote a piece about the capture of a 32-year-old wannabe king. We've now learned he's bought the world's most expensive home, another bauble for a Saudi prince, when the Chateau Louis XIV sold for over $300 million. 2 years ago, Fortune magazine called it the world's most expensive home, and Town and Country swooned over its gold-leafed fountain. Marble statues and hedged labyrinths set in a 57-acre landscaped park. But for all the lavish details, one fact was missing: the identity of the buyer. Now it turns out that the paper trail leads to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, heir to the Saudi throne. The The 2015 purchase appears to be one of several extravagant acquisitions, including a $500 million yacht and a $450 million Leonardo da Vinci painting by a prince who's leading a sweeping crackdown on corruption and self-enrichment by the Saudi elite and preaching fiscal austerity at home. He has tried to build an image of himself with a fair amount of the success, that he is different, that he's a reformer, at least a social reformer, and that he's not corrupt, said Bruce O'Riedel, a former CIA analyst and author, and this is a severe blow to that image. The chateau is built in the style of Louis XIV, and a marble statue of him overlooks the grounds. This is the gold-leafed Apollo fountain in the garden. It's a reproduction of a fountain at Versailles, which I once visited many moons ago. The New York Times has a slideshow, a chateau fit for a crown prince. Take a look. Ecuador has warned WikiLeaks' Julian Assange not to interfere in Catalonia's separatist crisis. Ecuadorian president said he's angered Madrid by using Twitter to pump out messages of support for Catalonia's independence drive and accuse Spain's central government of repression. Spanish Foreign Minister Alfonso Dastis has said there were signs that Assange was trying to interfere and manipulate amid the Catalan crisis after the outspoken Australian met last month with a prominent Catalan pro-independence figure. We do not want to intervene under any circumstances with respect to Catalonia. We hope the problem is resolved as soon as possible for the benefit of all Spaniards. This is the president of Ecuador, Moreno. We have reminded Mr. Assange that he has no reason to interfere in Ecuadorian politics because this status does not allow it, nor in that of nations that are our friends. He does not have the right to do so, and he has committed himself to this. And I take you back to a tweet from November the 15th, when I was responding to a tweet from Sputnik, and I said, but Sputnik, Julian Assange has become very linear in the matter of Catalonia. And I was surprised it took the Ecuadorians so long to put a stop to this. And then, of course, in December 2016, I was writing about the US election. We have a deviated tomahawk. And I was talking about how we saw a feeding of the hothouse conspiracy frenzy online, which maintained a constant state of destabilized perception and timely and judicious doses of WikiLeaks leaks, which drained Hillary's bona fides and her turnout and motivated Trump's. In this image you see a Chinese and Pakistani guard at the border between the two countries, and contrast that with the plateau. And this is the point I've been making, which is Xi Jinping as Narendra Modi surrounded from the plateau to Gwadar to the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, and now the Maldives. Venezuela gives Russia's Rosneft gas field concessions, that's via Rosneft. Japan opens world's first drive-through funeral service, that's the Telegraph. Interesting article in Global Research by a fellow called Andrew Koribiko. Why does Russia want to sell arms to the Central African Republic, he asks. Russia's military diplomacy in the war-torn Central African Republic is designed to stabilize part of Africa's failed state belt, set the stage for Moscow to eventually move its peacemaking efforts to the continent's next cauldron of chaos in the neighboring Congo, all with the intent of reasserting its historic great power role in Africa and providing more strategic value to its relationship with China. Technical specifics about this news aside, many people are scratching their heads and wondering why Russia is involving itself in one of the world's most impoverished and conflict-wrecked countries, especially since the CAR has been in a state of civil war since late 2012. And then saying this is Russia's Central African foray into military diplomacy. Should it be a success, then it might be able to emulate this model in the neighboring Congo, which has predictably been beset by hybrid war ever since President Kabila delayed what would have been his country's first ever democratic transfer of power in late 2016. The spiraling situation in one of Africa's largest and most strategically positioned states holds the dire risk of running into another all-out civil war along the lines of the 90s conflict that was tellingly referred to as Africa's World War and eventually contributed to the deaths of an estimated 5 million people. It might be too late to avert a disastrous repeat of this scenario even in part, but Russia could be calculating that its Central African experience in military diplomacy might be of assistance in this regard if it can use its expected gains in Bangui to eventually reach similar arms deal with Kinshasa that could give the edge to government forces and prevent the country's collapse. And it's an interesting idea, talking about the US PSYOP campaign of Kony 2012 in the early months of the same year was nothing more than a cover for deploying its special forces into the tri-border region between those two states and the Congo in order to foment instability for preemptively disrupting China's plans. So quite an interesting piece, worth a look. The link is there if you're interested. Interesting picture of John Travolta in Riyadh. That's from Summer Saeed. Chinese authorities to use detentions and data-driven surveillance to impose a digital police state in the region of Xinjiang. They've already imposed it. Southern Xinjiang, the vast desert basin from where many of the students came, is one of the most heavily policed places on Earth. Deep in the desert's southern rim, the oasis town of Hotan is a microcosm of how Chen, the Xinjiang party boss, has combined fearsome optics with invisible policing. He has ordered police depots with flashing lights and foot patrols be built every 500 meters, a total of 1,130, according to the Hotan government. The AP saw cavalcades of more than 40 armored vehicles, including full personnel carriers, rumble down city boulevards. Police checkpoints on every other block stop cars to check identification and smartphones for religious content. Xinjiang has very likely exceeded the level of police density seen in East Germany just before its collapse. What we've seen in the last 12 to 14 months is unprecedented. Much of the policing goes unseen. To enter the Hotan Bazaar, shoppers first pass through metal detectors and then place their national identification cards on a reader while having their face scanned. The facial scanner is made by China Electronics Technology Group, a state-owned defense contractor that has spearheaded China's fast-growing field of predictive policing with Xinjiang as its test bed. The AP found 27 CETC bids for Xinjiang government contracts, including one soliciting a facial recognition system for facilities and centers in Hotan Prefecture. Hours after visiting the Hotan Bazaar, AP reporters were stopped outside a hotel by a police officer who said the Public Security Bureau had been remotely tracking the reporters' movements. There are tens of thousands of cameras here, said the officer, who gave his name as Tushan. The moment you took your first step in this city, we knew. I've been saying it for a while that Xinjiang is a laboratory experiment in this respect. November 2014, it's a laboratory experiment in control and surveillance. International markets, Brexit, Britain's now back Remain over Leave by 10 points. I'm so astonished that no one has sought to pivot yet. Euro dollar, scary resemblance, same moves in pips. This is Rafi. We're currently trading at 117.61. He's bullish about it, as am I actually. 2-year Treasury yield now above S&P dividend yield for the first time in a decade. Treasuries are the least volatile since 1965. This is not normal. Hallison days, remember? Currency markets 117.61, euro dollar, dollar index 93.93, Japanese yen 112.65, Swiss franc 0.9902, the pound 133.40, the Australian dollar 0.7661, about which I've changed my mind as well. I'm bullish about that. India rupee 64.595, South Korean won 1088.33, the Rial 329.49, Egyptian pound 17.8495, and the South African rand, last time I checked 1306, but it's rallied bigly over the last few sessions. We'll touch on that in a moment. Look at this dollar index chart from Adam Mancini. He's bullish about it. I'm inclined to disagree. Bitcoin spreads almost disappear as the CME futures on Bitcoin starts trading. If you're interested in the cash price, 18,890. WTI crude oil last trading at $57.64. My target for next year, first quarter, 63.99, which is a bullish outlier of a target. Gold, it's kind of finding a base, getting a bit more confident about it. 1255.67 last. How batteries sparked a cobalt frenzy and what could happen next. This is all about the demand for cobalt. The global market has increased from about $4 billion a year at the end of 2016 to about $8 billion now, and is roughly equal in size to the tin market. Orders for battery-powered automobiles were up 51% to 609,000 in the first 11 months of the year. And Bloomberg New Energy Finance's sales could surpass 1 million next year, almost equal to this year's global total. Let's move on to Africa. Rwanda's economy expanded by 8% year on year in the third quarter of this year, compared with 5.4% the same period last year. That's interesting. Need to do some analysis on what's going on over there. That's a significant move. Zimbabwe and ZANU-PF's continuing hegemony meet the new boss, same as the old boss. There's nothing in the streets looks any different to me, and the slogans are replaced by the by, and a parting on the left is now a parting on the right, and the beards have all grown longer overnight. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. This is about Zimbabwe. In fact, it was not really, it was more an internal ZANU-PF move, plus the army, than really a democratically driven process. And that's why I said the genie's out of the bottle, because I don't think they're going to be able to maintain this, even with a significant economic bounce. And bear in mind, you're bouncing off zero, so the bounces can be pretty aggressive. And with the Afrexim Bank ready to pump in a load of cash, that bounce will happen. Please caption this. Remember, this is a family platform. Hashtag ANC54. And that was what my piece was about over the weekend. I said, South Africa, will it be 1994 all over again? By the time you read this article, it is expected the African National Congress will have announced the successor to President Jacob Zuma's party leader. The ANC has ruled the Rainbow Nation since the end of apartheid, and whilst Mmusi Maimane of the Democratic Alliance and Julius Malema of the EFF have chipped away at the ANC's support, leadership of the ANC still translate automatically into the presidency, as the erudite and sophisticated Thabo Mbeki found out when Zuma decapitated Mbeki in 2009. President Zuma was born in Nkandla, Natal province. His father was a policeman who died when Zuma was 5, and his mother was a domestic worker. President Zuma rose from those lowly beginnings to become the ANC spy master, head of intelligence, and then finally to the pinnacle of power in Pretoria. Zuma became the president of the ANC on the 18th of December 2007 after defeating the incumbent Mbeki at the ANC conference in Polokwane. President Zuma has laughed. His chuckle should be trademarked in the face of his adversaries. Like a political sorcerer with a Teflon Don, has shrugged off all sorts of scandal. Only last week, the High Court characterized the president as implicated, conflicted, unreasonable, reckless, and acting with flagrant disregard for his constitutional duties. In many respects, President Zuma was surely the progenitor of this new 21st century linguistic warfare. Trump is another more recent linguistic warfare specialist, turning words on their head, cloaking oneself in the language of the righteous, and meanwhile charting a course that has been in many ways inimical to the interests of the folks from whom you're receiving your political legitimacy. His farewell speech on Saturday was a perfect example. Zuma's period at the helm has seen South Africa junked by one ratings agency, a rand in decline, and occasionally spectacular and extraordinary dives, and almost as many finance ministers as wives. Jack Paw's bestseller and potboiler, The President's Keeper, affords deep insights into a cast of shadowy operatives which stretched from the likes of Shabir Sheikh to the Gupta brothers. Goldman Sachs' Chris Coleman described this Sunday's choice of leader, well, it's moved into Monday, as follows. What is certain, therefore, is that the ruling party's conference will be a binary moment for South Africa's political and economic future. An era of inflows, fixed capital investment, and a broad rally in asset prices can be expected to follow a market-friendly outcome. Like 23 years ago, when Nelson Mandela opened South Africa for business, leading to 2 decades of over 3% average economic growth rates, a positive outcome stands to once again make South Africa a favoured destination for global investors. The markets rallied the rand big into Friday. On Friday, the rand moved a whopping, I said 2%, but I think it was closer to 3%, as the markets increasingly priced in a Cyril Ramaphosa win. Ramaphosa is seen as market-friendly and has said, "We will wash the ANC clean." If Mr. Ramaphosa succeeds in wresting the leadership of the ANC, South African asset prices will enter the sweetest of sweet spots. Global investors will surely buy the rand by the bucket load, and we could see a further meaningful rally in the order of 10% towards 12 versus the dollar. The stock market, which hit a record high a few weeks ago, largely on the back of Naspers' stake in Tencent. Naspers has a 33% stake in Tencent, which is valued at $158 billion, will soar as the banks are re-rated bigly. Mr. Coleman described the moment as a binary one, and the markets are highly skeptical around the candidacy of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. The nascent rally will come seriously unstuck. Party spokesman Zizi Kodwa said the ANC hoped to declare a winner on Sunday, but this depended on getting through the credentials process or vetting the eligibility of the delegates. Mr. Ram, I finally said, we can all remember the moment when Nelson Mandela came out of prison, blinking into the sunlight, and assumed the leadership of the Rainbow Nation. Mr. Ramaphosa could well be the ignition for returning South Africa back to that incredible moment full of promise. Dlamini Zuma won't. That's the binary outcome. This is a photograph of the President Zuma, who I call the laughing political sorcerer. December 2015, I said the markets are not interested in Zuma's explanations. They are seeing a South African president who has gone rogue. On that heady day in 1994, when Mandela was sworn in as president, it felt as if anything was possible. South African oil shares up 13.34% so far this year. Investors with strong nerves reap rewards as rands carry swords. Dollar versus rand, this is a chart from Karine Richards, 1309 last. I think we go to 12. The rand is strong on the likelihood of Cyril Ramaphosa being elected ANC head. Election results are expected to be announced on Monday. This is a photo one of my Facebook friends took of the Waterskloof today, the largest dam in the Western Cape. It's dire, my friends. We cannot afford to waste a drop. Egyptian pound chart, and this has been steady since the devaluation. Nigerian oil share up 43.02% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 50.02% so far this year. Stumbling into a debt crisis, Zambia, says the Africa Confidential, growing concerns over the scale and urgency of Zambia's impending debt crisis. The IMF and the World Bank have joined those who believe the country is heading for financial disaster. The relationship between the fund and the government has become almost a saga. talking about a report called How Zambia Can Borrow Without Sorrow, published on the 7th of December, that the real tragedy is the lack of productive assets Zambia can show from the borrowing. In other words, the vast sums borrowed were not put into productive investment. What a surprise. Passport and plates. This is a photograph of Port Sudan. So Tanzania seems to have learned nothing from the Kenyan case study of interest rate caps. Bear in mind, credit growth contracted in September. There's talk of them introducing rate caps. And then this is from Mr. Qureshi. Once Dulu left, something was always going to happen. Brace yourselves for IFRS and caps. Only wish we could buy bonds. According to the Tanzanian tourism sector, the number of tourist arrivals increased by 12.9% to 1.284 million. Zanzibar did particularly well. I'm running out of patience, says Rhino Odinga. Nobody will stop me from lifting the Bible, he said. It is better to stand up for the truth and die while at it than to be lying down. We will swear him in, whether they like it or not. We will do it at a national gathering where he will take the reins of power immediately, said Mr. Ongwen. Senator James Orengo said they say we cannot swear in Raila, but we're telling them we will bring forward the plan to do so. In his speech, Mr. Odinga said he will not be intimidated by Mr. Kenyatta's warning, adding that Kenya is bigger than all of us. This is, in my opinion, a political cul-de-sac. It's just amazing, mind-boggling, even. Interesting bio yogurt countering Brookside Disney Kids appeal with Tinga Tinga Tales branding. Growth happens in the valley, says Mike Sonko, the governor of Nairobi. Nairobi all shares up 29.11% year to date. We've come off a little bit, about 2% since closing at a 35-month high. NSE 20 is up 16.37% so far this year. Kisumu is photographed via the Magunga. And then tourism defies election jitters to grow 7.7%. It's a little bit behind Tanzania, but not bad given that it was an election year. And on that note, let me put up a few links. This is a link to a video of a helicopter ride to Mount Ololokwe with Tropic Air Kenya. And we were going from the Sirikoi Lodge. This is a photograph from the top of Ololokwe Mountain. There will be a way, there always is. Ian Craig told me in an interview I did with him when I visited that time. This is a photograph of Buffalo Country, Fairmont Mara, Masai Mara. A video of the Fairmont Mara, which is wonderful. It's on the river, special place to visit. And another video of Savo West National Park, where we visited with finch hunters. Hope you enjoy them all. Thank you for stopping by.